Hello, I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at J More Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those of you joining us live, drop your questions into the comment box and I will check from time to time. Everyone loves Chinese food, but do you know the history, the myths, and legends behind your favorite dishes, Chinese dishes? Today's guest is the award-winning New York Times best-selling author illustrator Grace Lin. Grace's newest book, Chinese Menu, is a stunning example of how what we eat can be a window into a vast and complex culture. Visually stunning, the book is desirable for children and adults alike. Let's say hello to Grace.
Hi.
Hi, Grace. Thank you for joining us today. Other than the show, what else is on your plate today?
Oh, I actually have a couple of podcasts that I'll be talking to, like Infatuation, which is one of my favorite Asian podcasts. So I'm excited to be talking to them later.
That's great. Well, I'm sure your schedule is pretty heavy right now because the book officially comes out when?
It
In a
officially
couple
comes
days.
out on Tuesday, but I'm having the big launch party for it on Sunday at Porter Square Books in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So if any of you who are watching now live near Cambridge, Massachusetts, I would love to see you there.
Yeah, and then I think you shoot over to the West Coast, San
Yes.
Francisco. Right, right.
Yeah, I'm going to Seattle, and I am going to, uh, oh, I'm so sorry. It slipped my mind, but it's a very, very revered uh, culinary cookbook store. But it's slipping my mind what exactly
You're
the
too
name
young to have those problems. You're way too young. And people might have seen it on the promo, and you'll see my little tag because there's something I might go to. But Grace is not only the author, she's an illustrator. And you went to Rhode Island School of Design. Was this your intention to do books like this, or did you go not with that in mind?
Well, it's very interesting because I always wanted to be a children's book creator. And when I went to the Rhode Island School of Design specifically to become a children's book illustrator, because I knew that's where Chris Van Allsburg went. He's the illustrator and author of like the Polar Express and Jumanji, and I wanted to be just like him. But when I went to the Rhode Island School of Design, I had this idea I would do kind of princess books like Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella. But it
Right.
was when I was there, it was a great kind of awakening to the fact that artists need to have a message to share with the world. And I realized what was my message, and I needed to look inward to who I was. And part of who I was or am is my Asian heritage. And that's kind of the message that I decided to share and kind of change the trajectory of what I decided to make my books about, though I still very much decide to make books.
Okay, your first book, tell us about that one, because that received really shot you into the stratosphere.
Well, that's interesting. My very first book was published in 1999. It's interesting that you say it shot me into the stratosphere because I did not feel that way back in 1999 when it came out. It took me a good 3 years to get the book. To break into the industry and get a book out. It was published by a very small publisher at the time. Now the publisher is called Charles Bridge. At the time they were very small. Now they're a bit larger. They're more mid-sized now. And it was actually their very first fiction children's book. So I'm not sure if it shot me into the stratosphere or not, but it definitely got my foot through the door.
Well, it got you recognition.
Yes, I think it got me it got me a star. I think I got a starred review, and I think it got me on a couple of lists, which is, like I said, which was great, and I really appreciate it. Unfortunately, I think, and I think for that publisher at the time, I think they also very much appreciated it. Unfortunately, I think nowadays, because it's such a competitive field, and there are so many books out there, I think that what happened to me in my first book would have been considered good, but not stratospherically amazing.
Well, it got you noticed, and that was the important thing. And you brought up that you wanted to do something that was Asian based on your heritage. And there's a quote I found somewhere. It says, "Books erase bias and make the uncommon everyday and the mundane exotic. A book makes all cultures universal. You have become an advocate for diversity from day one." And the books, there's most of them started as illustration books, and then you've done some novels, and now we're here promoting your latest book, which is just gorgeous.
Oh,
You
thank
did
you.
all these illustrations, and it's the myths behind the Chinese American or the American Chinese dishes. I have to change that, because if it's Chinese American, it's Chinese doing American food. If it's American Chinese, it's American people doing Chinese food. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I know, it's very confusing. It's actually my copy editor who set me straight. So American Chinese food means that it's Chinese food that has been influenced by American taste. Chinese American food means it's what we would consider American food, influenced by Chinese taste. So it would be like, I guess we would consider a baked potato American food, right? So it'd be be a baked potato with kimchi sauce, and or hot and sour sauce. So it would be an American food influenced by Chinese taste, or Asian taste. That would be Chinese American food.
Right. I looked at that and I went, there's so many revelations going through the book, and I haven't finished it. But I went, it was like that person with the V8. And it is not a cookbook, folks. It is the stories behind the recipes, like Peking duck, chopsticks. And it's broken up like a Chinese menu, which an American Chinese menu. Go back to that.
No, it's very complicated.
Because in China, they don't eat this way. They eat banquet style. It's put out and you help yourself. But it's broken down. These stories are fabulous. And Grace is known for writing children's books, and she's done novels for, let's say, children 8 and up through preteens. This book is suitable for the same age group and on up. And it's a book to be shared with your children, your grandkids. Definitely the look of it. We're going to go back like this. Look at this. She's illustrated all this. It's a cocktail table book, but I can see families sharing it. It's a great way to, take the kids to the Chinese restaurant and you can tell them the stories about chopsticks, or you can come home and tell them the story about chopsticks. And the table of contents is broken down: chopsticks, tea, appetizers, soup, side orders, chef specials, and dessert. There is one recipe in there, which is scallion pancakes, which was your mother's. Am I correct?
Yes.
You see, I'm going on and on. I'm not letting you talk. You're just nodding your head. How long, looking at these illustrations, how long did this book take to come to fruition? When did you start it?
I can answer that in two ways. I had the idea for this book in 2004, and I've been kind of collecting stories, all these little stories, since 2004. But I think it took a little less than a year. Once we decided we were going to make this into a book, it took a little less than a year, not by choice, but because I would have liked more time. But it took a little less than a year to bring it to publication.
It is just fascinating. So let me look through. Tell the audience about the Chinese menu and the inspiration. I think we've covered that. We talked about how long. The book release is timed for the holiday season for gift giving, and it's available, and Grace's website will connect you to everything, and it's not a hard one to remember. It's gracelin.com. Very simple. And a lot of her information will be floating up in the comments section. So the release is next week, and we're coming up to the Moon Festival, which is mid-autumn. Is that what they call it? The Mid-Autumn Festival.
Yes.
And it is similar to our Thanksgiving. It's when the family gathers around. There's some significance to the moon. You've told some stories. Can you share one or two?
Sure, there's many significant stories about the moon. And the Moon Festival, like you said, is very much like our the American Thanksgiving. And the one of the things that's very similar is that here in the United States, we always kind of have to eat a turkey at Thanksgiving. If we don't have turkey, then somehow it just doesn't feel like Thanksgiving. The Moon Festival is similar, where there's a certain food that if you don't eat it, it just doesn't feel like the Moon Festival. And that food is the moon cake. If you don't have a moon cake at the Moon Festival, somehow it just doesn't feel like the Moon Festival. And the moon cake has many different stories, but the one that I talk about in Chinese menu, which I think is really fascinating and I think many people really enjoy, is the one that shows how the moon cake is actually connected to the fortune cookie. Now, it's been told, it's been pretty, most historians, food historians, believe that the fortune cookie is a Japanese American invention, but there are a couple of Chinese Americans who kind of claim that it is a Chinese American invention, and they use the story of the moon cake to show the connection. Because all the way back in 1270, the late 1270s, when the Mongols had taken over China during the Yuan dynasty, the Han Chinese wanted to rebel, but they couldn't figure out a way to organize. So the way that they figured out how to organize was they put messages inside their mooncakes and passed them out at the Moon Festival. So everybody had the message of when to rebel and what time. And that kind of legend where they shared messages inside the mooncake is such a treasured legend that many Chinese Americans believe that that is what inspired the fortune cookie. That when Chinese immigrants came to the United States and wanted to celebrate the Moon Festival and they didn't have mooncakes, they put messages inside biscuits. And from biscuits, it's easy to see how it went to cookies. And that's why they say the fortune cookie is Chinese American, which, like I said, is very debatable.
Okay. And the rabbit has a significance to the moon.
Oh, yes, very much so. So if you ever look up at the moon, there's lots and lots of dark patches on the moon. And here in the United States, when we see those dark patches, we usually say, oh, look, it's the old man on the moon up there, because we think those dark patches make a man's face. But in Asian countries like China and Taiwan, Japan, when they look up at the moon and they see all those dark patches, they don't see a man's face. They actually see a rabbit. And because they see a rabbit, they've made all these different stories about this rabbit. And in Chinese culture, they call this rabbit the jade rabbit. And he is the moon lady's companion. And the moon lady is the goddess of the moon. And the moon lady is the one who can make your wish come true. And so they say if you see the rabbit on the night of the Moon Festival, you can send him your wish. And maybe he'll bring it to the moon lady. And maybe she'll make your wish come true.
There's so many, and I mean, I'm still going through. I went through the chopsticks. There's 4 or 5, and probably many more myths about the chopsticks, but Confucius was involved with one of them.
Yes. The story about chopsticks is very interesting. Like I said, there's many stories in the book, but the reason why a lot of people wonder, why do Chinese people use chopsticks? And one of the reasons is because of Confucius. He believed that dining and eating was not just something to fill your belly and not just something to make you live, but dining was a way that you could cultivate your spirit, a way to make you more of a gentleman or more of a gentle lady or make you a more refined person. And so he wanted dining to be an experience that would cultivate you. And he felt that having a fork and a knife at the table, those were weapons to him. It's like, you shouldn't have weapons on the table. That is uncivilized. And he felt that chopsticks, these slim, refined chopsticks, that was something that was civilized. And so that's why he very much promoted chopsticks and took off.
Well, one of the interesting terms that you had there, we talked a little bit earlier that dining Chinese is communal. It's many platters out on the table. And people who've been to Chinese restaurants where it's a round table with a lazy Susan in the center. And I like the terminology grave digging. You want to tell people?
Sure, that's more about the etiquette of using Chinese chopsticks or using chopsticks in general. There are a couple things that are kind of taboos, which are considered very rude when you use chopsticks. One is sticking your chopsticks straight up in the rice bowl where it sticks up like that, because that recalls incense at an altar or at a temple, which recalls death. So you don't want to bring that into the table. So that's why you shouldn't put your chopsticks straight up. And the other thing is the grave digging that you mentioned. Grave digging is like when someone passes you a communal plate and you're like, oh, I only want the beef. And you like kind of go through and like take off the beef and you kind of like dig through everything and try to get just the choicest pieces that you want. And that's considered very rude. And they call that grave digging.
We have a question here. It sounds like your book features defining stories about various elements of Chinese cuisine. Why no recipes? Is there a cookbook you recommend for traditional Chinese food?
Sure. So the reason why it has only one recipe is because the book is called Chinese Menu, which is supposed to feature the food that you would get at a restaurant. So this is really an ode or a love letter to all the immigrants who came here to the United States and opened these restaurants and opened these Chinese restaurants as a way to survive and thrive here in the United States. And for so long, for so long, we've kind of looked down at these restaurants. These Chinese chefs who came, they had to price their food very, very inexpensively because that was the way that they can entice people to try it. So for so long, we've considered this Chinese food as cheap food, right? Where actually it takes just as much effort to create a Chinese dish as it does a French dish, which we have elevated. So this book is trying to show that the food that we eat at a Chinese restaurant has this rich and beautiful history and lore. And not only that, even though it has this rich history and roots in Asia, it's just as American as a hot dog or a hamburger, which is sometimes hard to get your mind around. But I am hoping that when you read this book, you realize that. So that's why there's not really any recipes in it, because it's more about the experience. It's more of a love letter to those kind of Chinese restaurateurs. But if you're looking for traditional Chinese food, I think that a traditional Chinese recipe book that, if you want very traditional, one book that I really liked, hold on, I've got it down here. Sorry, I'm going to disappear. This might not answer your question, but this one is something that I really enjoyed. It's called The Chinese Takeout Cookbook. And this kind of has all the recipes of the food that you would get at a Chinese restaurant. Now, you specifically said traditional Chinese food, and that's why I'm not sure if this is going to quite fulfill what you're asking, because as I said earlier, the food in here and the food that I reference, it's American Chinese food. So it's all Chinese food that has been influenced by American tastes. So it won't be the food that you get in this book, the food that you get in a Chinese restaurant here in the United States. It will not be what they eat in China. It will taste very different. So if you're looking for something that goes with my book, I would suggest something like this, the Chinese takeout book.
That's great. That's great. Talking about that, traditional, something that Trader Vic's made up was the crab rangoon. Rangoon. Goon. My mouth will work as an appetizer, which was a fried wonton with cheese in it and crab meat. And when you think about it, there is no cheese in Chinese food.
Not really, no.
No, the tofu, people would think tofu, but that's not cheese, that's soy. Um, so just other things. I was saying that I could have had the V8. Egg rolls. Where did they get their name? Well, they're dipped in egg before they're fried. It's pretty simple. Or, I mean, just commonplace. Like if you're holding your cup of tea and it's too hot to your hand, duh, well, it's too hot to drink. So I'm sitting there going, I'm just oblivious to some of these things. So it's been very eye-opening. I like the story about Peking duck having to be cut into 108 pieces. So I don't want to do the whole book, but I just think little tidbits, we're going to tease people.
Sure. Would you like me to tell that story?
I would love for you to tell that story.
Great. So that is actually one of my favorite dishes to get at a Chinese restaurant is Peking duck. But you don't get it often because it's like a special occasion food. Now, the traditional way that one would serve the Peking duck was that the chef would cut it in 108 slices. Nowadays, I don't think anyone is going to count that, but traditionally it was 108 slices, and that is because late in the Song Dynasty, an army was returning home to the capital. They had just finished a battle, and they were very hungry and very tired, and they're on their way back to the capital, as I said. They decided, because they were so hungry and tired, to stop at a small village to get something to eat. Now, this village only had one restaurant, and when the commander of the troops said, I have 108 hungry men, you must serve them or they will be very, very unhappy. The chef was a little bit worried. He realized that he did not have enough food to feed 108 men. In fact, all he had was one single duck, and he needed to make sure that every single man was fed. So he very carefully sliced that duck into 108 slices so that every soldier could get one piece and could leave not unhappy.
I just thought that was the stories, everyone. It's beautiful. Let's see. And Grace's daughter is sort of the model for some of these pictures, and also a consultant. I think at some point she told you to put flowers on her dress.
Yes, she did. I was just going to leave her with just a plain pink dress, and her friend is the one that's on the cover of the book. And I would just leave her friend in the red, just a plain red dress. And my daughter said, that's too plain. You need to add flowers. And I did. And I think she's right. It looks much better.
It was great. I'm just sitting here thumbing through. So everyone, the book is available actually now. You can order it and through Amazon or any of your favorite booksellers. And as Grace said, if you're going to be in Cambridge, Mass, come to the book launch. I am at the point where I'm going to ask you my typical questions at the end of the show. And feel free, let's wing it. What was your best bite all week?
What was my best bite all week? Well, we actually ordered Chinese food the other day, and I got beef wrapped scallion pancakes, beef that was wrapped in scallion pancakes. Now I'm messing up the title of the food, but it was delicious.
Okay, that sounds good. And just tell everybody, the scallion pancakes recipe is in the book. It's your mother's recipe, right? Okay. The next question, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
If I could give my 18-year-old self a piece of advice, What would it be? I think it would be, um, don't worry about what other people are thinking about you. They're not thinking about you. Everyone's just thinking about themselves. I think at 18, I think I was so worried about other people's opinion, I didn't realize that everybody was pretty much in the same boat.
That's very, very true. And I know cooking is not particularly your thing, so there might be more than one, but is there an ultimate culinary fail that you wish to share with us?
I have many culinary fails, but during the pandemic, uh, we tried many challenges. One thing that my daughter and I saw online was something called the raindrop cake, and it looks so beautiful. It's like this Japanese, it's this clear cake, but it's kind of like a gourmet Jello. We'll say it like that, right? But it's much more complicated than that. And they would like have like flowers inside. It was just beautiful. And so we attempted to make a raindrop cake, and it was an incredible fail. I remember someone said that it looked like a breast implant.
That draws a real picture in my mind. Oh, yeah. Okay. Um, if you woke, I think I know the answer to this one because it's all over your website. If you could wake up tomorrow with a new talent, what would the new talent be?
Oh, I think the one on my website is where I would love to be an ice skater. I don't know if that would be what I want to be now. Maybe because I'm older and like, I think uh, if I could wake up with a new talent now, it would probably be the ability to speak any language.
That's the first time somebody said that, and I think that's really a great one because I can barely manage English, as you've
Yeah.
already noticed. That there's a friend of mine, I think, who speaks like 5 languages, and it's Amy Riolo. She's in Italy now for like 3 or 4 months doing something. She's written like 15 cookbooks.
Wow.
And we were at an IACP gathering in Chicago, and we get in the cab, and the guy was from Turkey, so she starts speaking to him in Turk, and I'm going, I would love to be able to do that, and I think that's a great talent to look for. And it's not too late. You can, you
Yes.
have obviously do some Chinese.
Yes. But you see, the thing about language is that I would love the ability just to do it. I don't want to spend the time to learn it.
Okay, so you want when I find my magic wand,
Yes, I want it to
I'll
just be
remember, and
magically
that's
just
it. That's it.
bestowed
You'll
upon
get
me.
it. You'll just wake up and you look at your husband, and you'll be speaking in Cyrillic to him.
Yes,
He'll be looking
exactly.
at. Okay. And my final question is, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
Oh, gee, I think, you should have asked me which one was my favorite story in the book.
All right. Which one was your favorite story in the book, and do you care to share?
My favorite story in the book is Buddha's Delight, and the reason why that's, my favorite story is because I think it's such a beautiful story, that I feel like we could all kind of take something from. Buddha's Delight is the story of, it's called Buddha's Delight because it's based um, on 18 monks. The original Buddhist light has 18 ingredients in it because what happened was 18 Buddhist monks went out to beg for alms, to beg for food for the day, for their dinner. And they all went out and they all got donations. When they returned home, they realized that none of them had enough in their bowls to make a meal for themselves. They just had a few bamboo shoots, a few lily flowers, a few of this, a few of that. But they did realize that if they pooled all of their ingredients together, they might be able to make a dish that would feed all of them. And so they did. And that's how they created Buddha's Delight. And it was such a delicious dish that that's what we eat to this day. And I just think that's just such a beautiful story.
It is. It is. And I want to remind everybody there are many other, you're looking for books for your children and novels if they're preteens. Just go to gracelin.com. You can see her books. This one is the one you get. It's just gorgeous. The stories are great for your own entertainment to share with your children and grandchildren. It is the gift that will keep on giving. I want to thank you, Grace. It's been a joy, and you have such a lovely smile and so bright. You made my day even brighter. Thank you so much. Much success with the book, and I can't wait to see what's next on your list to do. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Okay, everyone, my food tidbit of the week is it is county and state fair time, and what can be more fun than entering the cooking contest? She might not be from the Andy Griffith Show, but she is close. Linda Skeens, who has swept the baking blue ribbons at the Virginia Kentucky at the Virginia Kentucky District Fair. She got best cake, best pie, best brownie, best jelly, best jam, best applesauce, best apple butter, best pumpkin butter, best sauerkraut, and spaghetti sauce. Linda has put all of her blue ribbon recipes in one book called Blue Ribbon Kitchen by Linda Skeens. Another one, if you like to cook and can and jump in on top of all her award-winning recipes. The Jewish New Year is approaching, Yom Kippur. So let me wish all those who are celebrating Lashana Tova for a sweet new year and an easy fast. I will not be on the show next week. And the following week, we're going to have the people on from Aussie Selects, which is Australian lamb charcuterie. Monthly, Jaymore Living is giving away $50 gift cards to some of your favorite local restaurants. Visit jmoreliving.com /, even though it looks like a / contest to enter to win. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at food@jmoreliving.com, or Instagram is @DaraCooks. All shows are immediately archived in video form on Jaymore Living's Facebook page and jmoreliving.com. Feel free to dig into our video archives of past shows. We truly appreciate it when you share our show with friends and family. It helps it grow. May your plates always, always remain full. Thank you for joining us, and I will see you in 2 weeks.